Yay! We're making some fried donut recipe, which is glazed with some sugar and milk powder. And yeah, you can have fun with it. You can braid it as well and get it nice. So you need egg, of course. You need salt. I did this in 2 types. So I had the cocoa form. So if you're going to the cocoa, you need the cocoa powder. You need some essence of your choice. Nutmeg is very necessary. Or you could use the cinnamon instead. I had the yogurt culture. I had sugar. This is powdered milk. And I only had liquid milk. Any one you have, you can use it. And yeast, margarine. You can equally use butter. And then some flour, which is very necessary. Water, yes, atachi. So there are so many options you could go with. I start with this one where I just kicked off with the flour. I added the salt to break the flatness in the flour. So you add in the salt, you mix it nicely. Then I added in my nutmeg, sugar, yeast, and the arrangement matters a lot, and milk powder, a bit of margarine. Yes, so how you incorporate everything matters, because if the yeast and the salt go and mix, it's going to be trouble. So you realize, yes, at this point I use more of dry ingredients. The margarine, if it's too much, it's going to be too short. Too short means hey baby wuntem. So you need to be careful. Then I added in the wet ingredients. So I added the egg with the essence. And you realize that this is a bit short because the margarine was a lot and it's a bit concentrated. You realize it's so rich. So that's how come that's firm textured. But it's a bit too rich. So if you fry, a bit flaky kakra, a bit bubu kakra. So I added in more flour, 1 cup more flour, and I added a bit of water in as well. Then I incorporated it beautifully together. So one thing is, if you're using powdered milk and more dried, you need to check and use a bit water when you're mixing. Yes. And if you use too much margarine, it's going to be short into which we'll say a baby bukaka. So you need to be mindful. In as much as you want rich donuts, don't make it too rich. So once that forms beautifully, I'm going to go on to knead it to activate the gluten a bit. And I floured the surface of my work area, and then I kneaded. So these are ways you could knead your dough. You could knead with how do I say? Yes, you could do it like this. You could equally do it like this. So there are numerous ways you could knead your dough. You can do it any form which is cool for you. So I taught you quite a number in this video how to knead your dough. And kneading your dough, for your chips recipes, you'll be kneading. For your bread recipes, you'll be kneading. So this is how to activate gluten in your dough. You need to knead it very well. To me now. So make sure you knead your dough very well. There's another way you can also knead your dough. So yes, in this recipe, I hope you perfect your dough kneading as well. So once this is done beautifully, I'm just going to form it into a circle and allow it to rest. You need your dough to rest for about 15 to 30 minutes before you continue to work on it. So when it comes to donut bofrot, the dried ones, it's a matter of time. So plan for it. So like I was saying, knead it beautifully into a bowl and then put it in your bowl, cover it up or put it in the sun, anywhere for heat to get to it a bit, for it to rise and for the yeast to also work properly and for the dough to rest. So this is the second way I went. I added the salt at the base, I added in my flour, I mixed it together, and then I proceeded to add in my cocoa powder with the nutmeg. Then I added in sugar to my taste and preference. Yay. And of course the margarine, a little bit of yeast because my culture was small. But you could just, because I'm going to use a culture in this one, I can try to omit the yeast. It's still going to work perfectly. Yes. And you realize because I use a culture in yeast, when I take the dough, when I'm done with the dough, you realize that it's increased massively. So once you're done mixing all the dry ingredients, you create a hole in the middle. Then yes, this is my yogurt culture. If you have some good yogurt, probiotic yogurt, you can also use it. Then I added in the egg. I almost forgot my essence, so when I remembered, I had to open it quickly and put that in. It's very necessary. Sure. And of course, I added in milk. I think I didn't capture it well here. So the milk also was in. Then of course I'm going to just be adding the water in bits. That's what you want to do. That's the ish here. So you need to mix it together beautifully. Let it come together as one dough mixture. And I'll say add your water in bits. Don't pour so much water in at a time, or it's going to get too soft and you don't know, maybe your flour may not be enough. Now so please, when you're doing such things, have patience and do make sure that you add in your water in bit and knead it nicely. So I'm doing the first kind of kneading, yes, and I'm still bringing it together. So you realize this is not so dense, this is softer, and the yeast with the culture, Charlie, it's activated super. So it's already a bit soft. I'm just going to knead this too as well. You need to knead it very well though. And if you're eating the cocoa, because it's brown, you're going to see the yeast on it. If you see something like that, don't be scared. Yes. Unless you don't use the yeast and you just use a culture. Yes. So I use some flour on my working table so it doesn't stick onto it. Then I continued the kneading. So I told you earlier on that it's very necessary when it comes to this dough meals. You need to be able to knead it properly. If you don't knead it well, you're not going to activate the gluten well in the end. So papa, so you want to make sure that you knead it well. Any form you'd want to knead it, just make sure you knead it. So I've taught you quite a number of ways to go about your kneading in this video. So when we get to the bread part, I hope we won't have issue. So you realize how stretchy it is. The gluten is being activated. See how stretchy it is. So I'm going to also do this into a bowl. Put it in my bowl, cover it and let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes. Worst case, 15 minutes. At this point, you realize that your dough would have risen. So when you put your hand on it, it's going to go down a bit. And you realize that when I use a culture, so you could see so much air in there. Yes, so if you use a culture with the yeast, it's going to rise so much. If you use a culture, it's going to rise perfectly. If you use just a yeast too, it's going to work. Yes. So this is the rich one. Do you realize how tough it was and how hard it was for it to rise? It could mean that the yeast got into more contact with the salt than the sugar. That's why it wasn't rising too well. So if you have a dough like that, make sure you cut it more into the flat shapes than to do a circular ball with it. That one, you're going to have issues when you fry. We'll say, so if you realize that your dough is a bit too rich, and then when you leave it to rise, it doesn't rise too properly, please roll it a bit thinner and cut nice shapes out of it and fry. That's better. So yes, I rolled with my rolling pin, and I always say, as you're rolling, be turning it and make sure you get the thickness well. It shouldn't be too thick, it shouldn't be too light, and have some fun. So I cut this with my improvised big tins to get some shapes. Yes, so if you have cutter, you can use it to cut it. If you don't have, whatever you have, you can make use of it. So you cut your shapes out beautifully, and this is how you do the ring donut. So you do a circle and a smaller circle in the middle, and that's going to give you your ring donut. So see how easy it is. And once you're done cutting the shapes you want from it, the dough left, you put it together again, you roll it, you cut it. That is how it is. Yeah, so I was teaching you how to do the circular ones, the ball. If your dough rises perfectly, then you know you're safe to do the ball. If it doesn't rise perfectly, please don't do the ball. Yes, so for the ball, you can go circle on your working area, or you could finish it up in your palm. It's up to you. However you get your ball, that's the most important. And then the fold in method always works, honestly. As I always see fufu. Now we're trying to circle. When you fold it in, it becomes great. So the brown ones, I equally did the same. I did them into a ring donut type. Then the braided one, you saw, this is how I went about it. So I divided it into 3. You could divide it into 2 and just twist and then just put it together. But I did this, should I say cornrow type? Well, this is, yes, the braided type. Let me just say it like that. So I just stretched it out. You know, just use your hand to do it into this, like I'm doing. Just stretch out the dough. Make sure you have even sizes or even length, the most importantly. So when you braid, it will all come together nicely. So as you are stretching it, you're equally rolling it. So I joined the edges and then I braided it. You know, the ladies will do good with this. If you braid your hair, yes, if you know how to braid, it's going to be very fun for you. If you don't know how to braid, please, you can do the simple one. It's very, very simple. The 3-3 kind of. Or you can just do 2 and take it around each other to get some twist. Any way you want to go, it's up to you. Just have fun. That's the most important thing. Then when you have kids around, these are the things that make it a bit fun for them. So yeah, once you're done braiding it, make sure the ends, you close it properly. Then yeah, I put it together. And this was what I did. Was I pressed the ends so that they would form together with the other one, so it won't separate itself. So to frying, I started by also setting up for my glazing, because you need to glaze it whilst it's hot so it picks the glaze, else it won't really pick. So I used sugar and then the powdered milk. Non-dairy powdered milk always does a trick for me. So your oil has to be very hot, very, very hot. Then you introduce your donut into it. Once the oil is very hot, once the donut goes in, it's going to sink, but then it's going to rise up. So it's going to sink initially, then it will rise up as it's cooking. So if your donut sinks in, don't worry, it will rise up. And you need to be turning it to make sure that all the parts brown perfectly. Else you realize one part will be more brown and the other part won't be. Once it's golden brown, it's technically done. And you realize once it's done, because of the yeast inside, a bit too. It's going to rise up a bit. That means that, yeah, you did form, like, it's picking up nicely. So once it's golden brown, you're literally done. Yes, and you pick it out and you put it in your colander. Yes, and I was telling you that the glazing, you need to do it whilst it's hot. So once you pick it out and it goes into your colander, you're going to look at glazing. And as you're picking it out, you should be putting in the new ones. Don't waste your time. Don't wait to take everything out. As you're taking them out now, be putting them inside. It's very, very necessary. For the brown ones, when it's cooked, you realize the color is going to be a bit faint. Yeah, so you still see it and it's going to rise. So the glazing, you just dip it into your sugar or into your milk powder. And yeah, I don't know, it's simple. It's not simple. Very, very simple glaze you could do. And yeah, I fried my braided as well. So you realize the brown ones, as they're cooking, the color is equally changing. Yeah, so don't be too scared to try the cocoa. The cocoa tastes very, very nice. Honestly, I love the Coco-Doughnut. So when you're done, donut is ready to be eaten as a snack, as a dessert. Charlie, try the donut recipe out. It is super, super, super much tried you.